Leafs trade talks are really starting to heat up as a report from Elliot Friedman has dropped, revealing a very interesting Leafs trade update. We're going to go over that report and discuss what it means going forward as Brad Treliving has an opportunity to cook up something big. We're going to break that down and discuss what this means going forward as the deadline inches closer and closer. But before we get into it, if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel, this is the place to be for daily Leafs content. Make sure to smash that subscribe button. Now, Darius, the Leafs are coming off of a horrible loss yesterday night, and it really screamed the fact that their depth is pretty rough. You're talking about obviously Dennis Hill to be having a rough game, Morgan Riley having a rough game, but also their depth. I mean, Connor Timmins as well. But regarding forwards and things like that, they're playing a lot of players that, when healthy, wouldn't be playing. And those guys have not been performing well. I think of Pontus Holmberg and even Nick Robertson this season. And that has fans calling for some trades. And Elliot Friedman recently came on. He's a left shot, but Friedman on the Fan Hockey Show name dropped a very interesting player as someone who would have interest in the same sentence as Yanni Gordon. He's talking about Jamie Alexiak. I have to believe the Leafs would have some interest there. Alexiak is 6'7" and has a ton of experience in the right side. Obviously, in this case, talking about a defenseman, but also mentioned Yanni Gord in the same sentence, which, of course, a package deal could be interesting here. And I just want to get your thoughts on this before we go into some of the other rumors and reports here. Alexiak and Yanni Gord as a package deal, or even just potentially Alexiak.
So we've been talking a lot on stream about potential trades and heading into the trade deadline and what the Leafs are looking to do. And we know that they want a center, they want some center depth, they want like a two-way guy at the third line center position, and they want some defensive help. And not just that, but they said, there's been some rumblings the last couple days, couple weeks. They might be interested in a winger as well, a depth option wing, right? So we've been racking our brains. Who are they going to trade with? Could it be the Flyers? Is it Scott Laughton? Is it Nick Bjugstad? Is it even Ryan O'Reilly, right, to a degree, who I think is still in the mix, and we might have a video on that as well. But I think through this now from Elliot Friedman, Brad Treliving's master plan may have just been revealed, because I think that he's going to get all three pieces, and it could be from the same team, and it's the Seattle Kraken. And Alexiak is a very interesting defenseman. I mean, again, he has experience on the right side. He's a left shot. I don't think Berube is going to really like that, but I think it's a great option because he's a big body. This is another guy like a Hawk and Paw that they could use in the lineup. He can still move the puck. He's been, pretty hot this season, actually, with the Seattle Kraken. He's had a decent year. So, and as of late, I should say. So, very interesting option. And again, I think we're starting to see a little bit of a plan come together here, which is, they might get all three positions filled from one team.
Yeah, and you think about how the pairing would look, and it's a very interesting case scenario here, and let's talk about it. So, Tanev and OEL as a pair. I don't hate the idea of adding a guy to play on the right side, or the left side, sorry, with McCabe, if there's not an obvious option on the right side. Riley Myers as a third pairing is crazy good. I don't care. And I would agree with that. And this would be assuming Phil Myers plays a Riley. And from Doug Doucette here, that's absolutely who I was thinking of as I wrote it. Alexiak and McCabe would be a nightmare to play against. Now, this becomes extremely interesting because you think about how the Leafs, what their priorities are. And we'll have videos, of course, on the third line center, even wingers that they're shopping for. But when it comes to the blue line, Alexiak McCabe is a powerhouse pairing, especially with how good McCabe has been playing this season. And Alexiak, we'll dive into his stats here in a minute, is also a very interesting player, a very solid player, 6'7". And if you compare that with a guy like Yanni Gord, take out a couple birds with one stone here, and maybe even make some other additions after that, things start to get extremely interesting. And as you look at his stats, again, stats aren't everything with these defensemen. But even if if stats did matter to you, 11 points in 48 games with 4 goals as a defenseman who's 6'7" is something that you don't see across the NHL very much at all. Averages 19 minutes a game there for the Kraken. And now he's only 32 years old.
Yeah, he's only 32. And this is another thing that plays into everything we've been hearing. He has term on his contract still, right? He's signed for the rest of this year. He's signed for next year still. So that's something that's attractive to Brad Treliving and the Toronto Maple Leafs. He eats a lot of minutes for the Seattle Kraken. They're not a great team either, right? So that's something to keep in mind. And again, you look at the stats of the other players too that they could acquire in this trade. It can help the team. It absolutely can help the team. If you look at Yanni Gord, obviously Brandon Tanev, brother of Chris Tanev, right? Yanni Gord this year, and Chris Tanev even 15 points, right? Playing as a depth option in that lineup, 33 years old. So again, and he plays pretty for depth option, like pretty significant minutes too, right? And he's another guy that can maybe play some special team minutes. So could be an interesting option. But with all of this being said, you're going to have to move some pieces out too, because the salary, there's no way it's going to work. But it will be easier with retained salary if you make this trade with one team and maybe get a third team involved if possible, instead of trying to go out and get 3 different pieces from 3 different teams at the deadline. So it is interesting. Yanni Gord isn't the biggest guy either. We've talked about him a little bit, right? Obviously, not the biggest guy, but he does fill the role that they need someone to fill on that third line. He can take the matchup game. He can take pressure off of Tavares and Matthews in terms of the matchup game, and obviously scoring as well. I think he's an underrated scorer. He can play a two-way game. He's won a Stanley Cup. He's tenacious in that way. So I think it's a pretty good option. Again, the salary cap, they would have to figure that out. Somebody's going to come out the other way, but I do wonder if this is the answer. I wonder if they're targeting the Seattle Kraken.
And let's also just mention Yanni Gourde is injured at the moment. That's why he's not here on this chart. Brandon Tanev, you see down there playing fourth line left wing for the Kraken. You have Alexiak on the third pairing. Makes a lot of sense. Look at Alexiak's cap hit, $4.6 million. Pretty pricey, but again, with the retained salary, you can make things work in that regard, in that way, and things start to become extremely interesting for the Toronto Maple Leafs if they're able to acquire some of these guys. And as you look at Yanni Gourde, I know there's been a lot of discourse about Yanni Gourde. Some fans love him. Some fans don't love him very much at all. And that's ultimately when it comes down to Brandon Tanev. This guy, I think, would be a perfect fit. Obviously, his brother plays for the Leafs. They don't play the same position or anything like that. He's on the last year of his deal. It would be the thing. But if you're getting Alexiak, you have an extra year. Help compete in that window with Chris Tanev and OEL and Jake McCabe, who are all a part of this team. And you look at the stats again, also a very interesting picture there for Brandon Tanev. It's kind of a scary one. But Yanni Gourde, 16 points, 35 games. Hasn't been great this season, but he obviously provides some depth at 33. I don't know if this is a Brad Treliving guy simply because he's on the expiring contract and is having a bit of a down year. And it's interesting. Regarding Alexiak, I mean, I like it a lot. I think it makes a ton of sense. Not a lot of people are talking about it. If you can find a way to pair these two up, that's where I start to get very intrigued. And then you go out and you find a different third line center from another team. I don't think Tanev would be super expensive. Alexiak, that's the question with the retained salary. Obviously, that's the biggest thing you're going to have to do here. But man, oh man, does Alexiak in a Brandon Tanev package make some sense for, I think, both sides at this point, depending on what Brad Treliving is willing to offer the Seattle Kraken.
And I think Seattle might be interested in Nick Robertson as well, or another younger piece, or even a piece off the roster. But, I do like that, Nick, in by way of, you get another defenseman and you get a winger that could help you. And I think the most expensive piece in this deal anyway would be Yanni Gourde, because you're going to have to, get some retained salary. And obviously he's a good player, so you're going to have to give up something for him. So if you remove him from the deal, then maybe you can go out and get a cheaper center still, someone else from another team. You could still do that. It's not set in stone that they're only going to make one deal with one team for, 3 players. But I think it's interesting. And I think we're going to make another video on it. I think Ryan O'Reilly is still very much in the mix to make a return to Toronto. So it's going to be very interesting what Brad Treliving has in mind. But I think these are definitely a couple options that they're looking at. They're looking at a ton right now, but I think that Alexiak is a Brad Treliving type player. Like, that would make a lot of sense. And reuniting Brandon Tanev with his brother, I mean, just makes sense at this point. So, and he's another guy that would put it on the line. I am a little concerned about the Leafs getting a little older. Alexiak, 32, he's going to be 33. Brandon Tanev's 33. So there is some concern there. But again, you're going for right now. You're trying to win a Stanley Cup in the next 2 to 3 years. So you got to do that sometimes.
Yeah. And let us know down below what your thoughts are out of these players. What kind of package would you want? And also let us know, do you think that the Leafs are going to get any of these guys? Thank you guys for watching. See you later. Cheers.